190-something million, hectares of arable land. But here we are talking about just 500,000. First of all, do an assessment of that. Number one, the objective of grabbing 500,000, so to speak, and how well that has gone so far.
Okay, thank you very much. The last time this matter was brought under focus in this studio, I was hesitant to make some categorical statement because it was more of an intention expressed then, and then that's about 3 months ago. And by now we should be seeing clear manifestation of, the implementation of what was intended. And it would have been the case that, certain things would be said to have been achieved by now, if those intentions were actually matched with commensurate, policy action follow-up. But from the look of things, it's a little bit difficult now to be able to say categorically that there is any obvious action towards turning intention to outputs.
Well, at least it needs to be said, if that's the way experts are seeing it. Part of the whole emergency was President Tinubu's declaration that, we really can't afford, when he had taken a look at the whole situation, we can't afford to have, agricultural downtime in terms of seasons, and that had implications. At that time, when the pronouncement was made that he was declaring an emergency, all sorts of people in the chain had been, aboard and had been at meetings. No doubt water was going to be crucial. Again, if you cast your mind over that aspect of it, especially this whole matter about being able to farm all the year around, it is indeed a laudable objective. Has that seen very much progress to report on?
Well, let's begin with our experiences since January this year to April. There was an unprecedented experience of extreme heat in this country. And to that extent, you can imagine how it will impact on water that easily evaporates under hot conditions. So even in better conditions, better weather, water, around that period of the year still remains a problem. More especially in the northern part of the country. Of course, it is also a problem in the southern part because within that period of time, it's just like the southern part is beginning to move into the rainy season. And don't let us forget that this year, the rains started, in a very haphazard manner, and it wasn't really helpful in some ways. And some who planted some crops lost a lot of crops, if nothing at all. At least I know of my younger brother who planted corn and told me that he had to uproot all the corns. That was way back in March when we met and were discussing. And he had to start all over again because the corn started tasseling and they were not up to a meter high above the ground. So
which
nothing
it's not going to go well.
So I'm just giving an example that is very close to me. Then you can imagine others, who planted probably bigger farms. And so the issue of water actually comes in here as a major crisis. And this year, perhaps it was not foreseen. But then, of course, with various parastatals like NIMET, for instance, in this country that is supposed to forecast issues of weather and advise. It's not enough to forecast. It's important to turn that forecast to advice, to counsel for those that will make use of it, not only for aviation, but even for agriculture, where it is also very pivotal. So I wonder if such kind of weather forecast actually got deep down to, trickled down to those who needed it, which would have helped in advising on how to go about farming. So yes, of course, water this year actually played a critical role, and it's going to affect agricultural yield at the end of the year because it started out in a very hard way, and it's going to have a multiplier effect, throughout the remaining part of the year.
Now, this is certainly a challenge because a weak farming sector is clearly a threat to government's food security agenda. Yet, all indications, there's so many different aspects to it. We were seeing some pictures there, and that's yet another aspect that we haven't touched on. In the midst of scarcity, food scarcity, so to speak, there's a lot of wastage. Even in the precious, relative little that we are producing, there's still so much wastage. So I don't know, do you think, being in the sector yourself, that Mr. President's urgency in this matter has been taken up? Because when all sorts of people were brought into the project at the time, you would some of them you couldn't even immediately see how they related, but that rather many more than too few people who are going to actually put their shoulder to the wheel on this subject matter. Do you have the impression that it was taken with the same seriousness with which the president made the statement that we have an emergency on our hands?
I don't think it was. And I think there's a gap between the policy pronouncements and actual implementation. And perhaps the urgency wasn't really felt by those who are supposed to take it up and translate this to action. And it's important to state categorically here that, like you said, all manner of operators will come in, unmindful of the the weather issue that I mentioned, unmindful of the food supply gap that the country is going through, and the need to quickly find a way of narrowing the gap. And then, of course, not thinking about the issue of price, price that fluctuates, especially at some point in time, and the fact that it's not even fluctuation this year, it's actually a spike. And everybody is feeling it. The rich, the poor, the rural, and the urban dwellers, they are all feeling it this time around. So I don't think all this were, brought into consideration. And then the fact you talked about food wastage. A point I would like to make about food wastage is, first and foremost, fundamentally, is a global phenomenon. But the issue of the proportion of food that gets wasted varies from country to country. Now, in developed countries, they've been able to minimize wastage, especially with the use of processing and storage facilities to be able to, prolong the shelf life. And so that makes more food available for consumption and less for the dust bin. But in developing countries like Nigeria, a lot of this food, these foods get wasted because electricity is a problem. So those who would even want to get into maybe cold room operations would not be able to run a profitable business if they have to use generator. And then, of course, processing, same problem. And then issues of logistics and then aggregation, the challenges of aggregation, they're also there. So for that reason, a lot of what is produced get wasted. It was estimated by FAO that more than 30% of what is produced gets into waste, and I think it's very likely to be more than that for Nigeria.
Well, it's not so very good news, but I know that the attitude is one of never say die. And in any case, it was a plan, it was a projection, and plans, they don't always work out as you had conceived at the time. So it looks like we're coming into this first year, and by all accounts, the report could have been better, because this matter of agriculture, it actually is touching so many different aspects. It is going to affect our ability to, acquire foreign exchange. We first of all have to feed ourselves and then be able to export. And yet we were hearing these, encouraging signs at the time that, look, this indeed was very much part of the plan. but I don't know that we are exporting as much as we could have. And in fact, is it when we are complaining here that I don't know, what do you think? One minister was saying that it wasn't a matter of availability as affordability, that there is food, but nobody can afford it, almost.
Well, okay, let's start from the issue of availability versus affordability. When politicians in office want to talk, sometimes they look for a safe haven. Mm-hmm. So the issue of availability could be a very smart way of going around the issue. And because for someone talking about availability, by what metrics, by what measures, by what standards has he been able to ascertain that we have this food available? That's the first thing.
Maybe from looking at a tube of yam, for instance,
in the market,
that nobody can afford.
That people cannot afford. And so it could be, and so that's one of the things that may have informed that statement. So at least to sound good, it's a question of sound bite. So so one cannot conclude by that, it's available. That's number one. Number two is that, it all depends on the places an individual goes. If someone goes to some local governments in Kano State and you see the field of tomatoes, you say, we have plenty of tomato in this country. Mm-hmm. So, but it would be wrong to conclude without going to some other parts of the country. Or if somebody goes to Ikiti and sees yams, in places like Elisha, around Ikole area and all of those other places, you say plenty of yam here or in Benue State. But the question is this: how much do we have relative to the consumers? And so these are the issues that we should bear in mind. So affordability is actually a major problem this year. And as recently as this last weekend, for instance, in the market, the prices of things had again gone up.
That's right.
Even That's more right. than before, for example. And so you talk about affordability versus availability. Now, what we talk about, let me use tomato as an example. Tomato, just this last week, the price has gone way up. And you count just on the fingertips about 4 pieces of tomato going for 1,000 naira.
And they don't look like the biggest or the healthiest.
Yes, and why they are not healthy, and I would tell you, is this. For instance, the factor of extreme heat that I mentioned earlier, has actually affected the yield of tomatoes this year because tomatoes are very sensitive to extreme heat. Mm-hmm. That is one. Then there's this insect that looks like a moth, a butterfly, called Tuta absoluta. The larva stage actually eats the leaves of the tomatoes, thereby lowering its ability to actually produce. Of course, we can go down to the rudiments of photosynthesis, the ability of leaves to manufacture food from this, energy from the sun and all of that. That's the basic thing. So when the leaves are already destroyed, then of course it will affect the production of the tomato itself. So these two factors actually drastically affected tomato supply, and these are the foundations of the spike. So you cannot then, under this circumstance, be talking about availability. Or some people will want to explain it away by saying, there's a season for tomato. Those who don't understand the rudiments of agriculture will want to wrong with that. But the truth about it is those two factors are the fundamental issues affecting the availability of tomatoes in the market and ultimately the price as we speak.
But how about the agricultural researchers? I mean, didn't they see this because it is well known, and is it that sector is lacking a bit to see a development and know that these are the countermeasures that are going to be necessary, or is that too simplistic a view of the situation?
Well, I won't say it's simplistic. I will actually commend the fact that you brought this issue out because it's very, very central. Agriculture will not be able to thrive without the underpinnings from the research community. And I also want to make reference to that August interview.
Yes.
Because one of the things I said was that the Ministry of Agriculture should not wait for the research institutes to come to them. They should go to the research institutes. I made that emphatically. Now, to what extent the ministry has done that, I don't know. And because one, It is when the ministry understands the challenges of these research institutes and helps in terms of funding and equipping them with what they need to function. That's when they'll be able to work well. You can imagine a research institute that does not have electricity, and then where they store, where they store their seeds, for instance, they're supposed to be under constant electricity supply, and it should be a cold storage. In fact, many of these seeds have to be stored even well below 0 degrees centigrade. And then you don't have electricity. What do you think will happen? Many years ago, there was a crisis in NIHOT in Ibadan. That is the Institute of Horticultural Research. That many of what they had in their seed storage unit got destroyed because of electricity challenge. And you can imagine how many other research institutes are suffering this. So if they don't have the basic things with which to work, what do we expect of them?
I was going to go to this area that you were at, as you especially referred to the weather earlier. When we hear presidential statements like an order for an immediate release of strategic grain, that kind of a thing, I was going to ask the impact of this inclement weather. I mean, this time, when people hear inclement weather, they think of bad weather, rain. But now, it can also be inclement in the other angle about it being far too hot. You've just spoken about electricity and all of that. Our strategic reserves, are they safe? Do they have an expiry limit? Must they be changed? Or if you stored it now, if you don't have a need for it, it's there for the next 5 years. Is it still good 5 years after? So how do this? It's a very complex chain, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's use common crops like what me and you are used to. Supposing yam tubers are stored in any of these silos for 3 years, what do you think will happen to it?
Can yam even be stored in silos?
So now let's talk about grains that have relatively longer storage lifespan, useful storage lifespan. After maybe 2-3 years, they are expected to be moved out, and then new harvest moved in.
Okay.
So, and then of course, even within this period, there's still the need for temperature control. And without that, if you put there are some parts of the country like Borno, Yobe, Sokoto, Zamfara, and Jigawa, which are on the northern fringe of this country, for instance. They're extremely hot. It goes way down, even to places like Yola. I've lived in Yola before, so I can tell you how extremely hot it can be, like around February, March, April. And so now you look at all of those places, and you think about having silos there without temperature control. What do you think will happen even to grains that are stored in there? So by conduction and convection, heat can actually destroy the things that are inside. And so there definitely should be a period of time after which what is in there should be moved out and other new harvests moved in. So, and it should be part of a bigger plan that government should be embarking upon. So you cannot store food in those places ad infinitum.
Okay. We're talking about agriculture, crop production generally now. When you look at protein production, for instance, that's a key thing that our government has to concern itself with. It ranges from poultry farms to fisheries to cattle rearing. That all of those things, they have their own special challenges. What's your commentary on that? Has there been, even though maybe I didn't remember to put it in there, that I would have expected when we're still talking about crop productions, when you look at Israel, for instance, when you look at the internet, and you see that Israel and some areas, close to the Middle East that don't have the kind of soil that we have, they are now doing soil-less agriculture, being, with science, adding the required nutrients to water. And it's mind-boggling when they come into these specialized greenhouses and you see what is being produced. I know that I should have remembered it when we're in that segment, but maybe you can find a way to bring that aspect in as well. and whether that is an option for us. I know that is not the mainstay of our agricultural production. It is said that the artisanal farmer is invaluable because there are so many of them. But let me go back to this whole matter about protein production.
Okay, so you want me to make some comments on
Please.
Things like greenhouse farming and all of that?
Yes.
Of course, we have very good weather from the south of this country to the north, the agroecological zones. Almost all of them can sustain greenhouse farming, depending on how it is, adapted to the weather in the different zones. And if you look at, some other countries in Africa that are doing something on greenhouse farming, there are parts of a country like Kenya. There are parts of Kenya that the weathers may approximate those of Nigeria. And so if in Kenya, for instance, if they can be producing and exporting cut flowers in a place called Naivasha in Kenya, for instance, the flour they produce there is essentially for export.
Yes.
And it's all produced inside greenhouse.
Okay.
And then can I also tell you
We're talking about flower. We're talking about
no, the same technology,
yes.
the same method.
Flowers as in tulips and that kind of thing.
No, I mean flowers, decorative flowers.
That's what I mean.
So now they produce, and then the vegetative part that are not to be exported, the leaves and the stems that are to be trimmed away, they are used for generating, they are actually used as biomass for generating electricity in the same Naivasha. So the plant is actually powering houses within the village, the Naivasha village. It's a typical example of what we can be talking about here. So in other words, you can even, do a kind of, a loop in which what is wasted here is used as an input here and stuffs like that. So if it is done in a place like that, can't we do it in Nigeria? And of course, we can even use the same technology for this tomato production we are talking about. And then, of course, we can even save tomato from these tuta absoluta that I mentioned, because the insects fly around, and when they fly around, they deposit their eggs on the leaves of these tomatoes on the field. And then, of course, the cycle, is so egg to larva, larva to pupa, and then to adult, and then the cycle continues like that. So, but in a warehouse, you'll be able to control that, for instance. So those are the kinds of things that I think we should be looking at. So it's very possible. Now let's move to the issue of animal protein.
Yes.
Again, Nigeria has what it takes to do so much of this. Now, let me refer to the National Institute of Oceanography and Marine Research that is very close to us here in Victoria Island, for instance. A lot of work had been done in that place. But are they, taken to the market? I doubt it. Are they done to scale? The answer is, probably no. Shrimps that are, that we basically import, or some foreigners are, catching in our territorial waters here, can be produced, under cultural condition. The work is being done by Nigerians, but the question is, that's why I said the government should go to the research institutes. And then, of course, you talk about poultry, for instance. Poultry is about the most organized subsector in agriculture in Nigeria, particularly under the livestock industry. But then, of course, the question is this: the policies that will help these poultry operators to really run their businesses profitably, keep them in business, minimize losses and thefts and other dangers, are those policies in place? Now, 2 years ago, no, this is 2024, 3 years ago, a colleague and a classmate of mine in the university was almost kidnapped from his poultry farm in Ogun State by these invaders, invaders who go about kidnapping.
Okay.
He just said he had something inside of him, like, what are you doing here? And then he didn't hesitate. When that question came to him, he jumped inside his car and drove out. Minutes after, the kidnappers came, and they were coming for him. And then, of course, they had to kidnap one of his officials, who luckily escaped when the kidnappers slept off in the bush in the night. So how do you expect that kind of a person to feel comfortable doing this poultry business? Because there's a risk, there's a danger. You cannot possibly do poultry business in the estate around here, for instance, the odor will not allow
That's
the
right.
people to rest. So you have to do it away from, where there's a concentration of human setting. And if that place is not secure, because it is, secluded and lonely, and so are you not discouraging
Indeed.
people? So that brings us to the security aspect of farming. And so it's part of the reasons why I also think that many people are shying away now from poultry production, whether eggs or meat, broilers. And then, of course, the cost of input, corn, is about, you spend about 60% of your recurrent daily expenditure on corn, in the mix of what constitutes the poultry feed. Now, if the corn is, way above what is affordable, how do you get the eggs to the market? How do you get the broiler meat to the market and people will buy?
And this has had an impact on the price of eggs in the market.
Definitely. I only mentioned the corn. What about the protein components of the feeds, for instance? How much do those ones cost? And then when you now put all of this together, so it's a big problem. It's a big problem for feed millers. It's a big problem for toll millers. It's a big problem for, that is commercial feed millers, big ones, and then small toll millers, and then the farmers who try to compound their feed right on the farm. Is a big problem. So, and I think these are the nitty-gritties of things that those who are in government should be looking at. And running agriculture, especially as a sector from government, especially the ministry, is not an armchair subject. I said it in that August interview that the ministers should go on the field. Stay in the office is not, what should be their major part of their activities. Most of the activities should be on the field. They should be on the field to have a feel of what goes on. That is what will inform the implementation of the right policy. Like when you talk about the declaration of emergency and stuff like that, not until they go on the field would they be able to feel and then know, actually the intensity of the crisis and then how to respond.
Wow. And this is the way it has been for the past year or so. We were hoping that maybe at the end of a year, even though there are those who might say that, we're talking about agriculture here. It's not an overnight thing. Perhaps, we needn't be too despondent. Let's take a break now and then come back and look at those aspects to are we being too anxious? We'll look at that when we come back. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back.
Weekday on Business Nigeria, we uncover the secrets of the financial world,
breaking down intricate economic and financial matters.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds, and the thrilling world of cryptocurrencies.
We unveil and analyze complex policies of the CBN and other government parastatals as they affect your everyday life, keeping you a step ahead every time.
Okay, this is edible. Facts matter. Our team dives deep to separate facts from popular opinion.
We simplify complex government policies as it impacts your everyday life, helping you navigate the ever-changing financial landscape.
Watch Business Nigeria every weekday at 2 p.m. only on TVC News. First, with breaking.
Okay, welcome back. And our guest is Dr. Olukayode Oyeleye. He's an agribusiness analyst and indeed a farmer himself with hands-on experience. The kind of thing he's been talking about that he gives the impression that he would be a lot happier if more people in charge of policy at the Agriculture Ministry were to be out there on the field, that then perhaps they'd be better able to see and indeed know how to advise on and apply policies. Here we are a year after, the president came into office, and I'm afraid his impression is that, it's a work in progress still, but he seems to give me the impression that not very much has changed from when the president had come. And I don't know, you've also implied you've implied your doubt about how well we are understanding what needs to be done. Because remember that before the president even became president, for a long time, he's been, agriculture has been a corner piece of his vision. And he had said at the time that what's so difficult? Corn, we were an agrarian people, that kind of thing. But as you've been talking about it in the past half an hour or so, it would appear that there are challenges. Fisheries, any good news? Because feeds, that seems to be a major component. You've talked about it in relation to poultry. When it comes to cattle, we know we've been speaking about ranching and the conflict between traditional cattle herders. All of that has been going on. But let me take this call from Mr. George calling in from Ikeja. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in. Good morning.
And good morning to the expert you are talking to.
Dr. Yele, thank you.
Yes. Uncle Yori, I have been wanting to find out what is the problem at the Agriculture Ministry. In the past 3 months or so, I have doubled the food allowance in my house. Yet, my wife is always complaining that the money is not enough to buy what we used to buy in the past, and even if we spend extra. So it brings me to the question. Our agriculture ministry, why is it that experts like the one before you are not manning that ministry? I've been listening to him. Now I've been wondering if this man were to be the Minister of Agriculture, wouldn't things have been different? I'm looking forward to the ministerial briefing when the Minister of Agriculture will be briefing us about what he has been doing, because I have not seen a roadmap from that ministry, just like Minister of Power. We need, food is very critical for survival in this country. And we need someone who is up and doing in that ministry. We see Ministry of Works, see LCT, see Aviation, see mining. You will see it. Nobody needs to advertise anything. You see it. But that of agriculture, I have not seen it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, the president needs to make some changes in his cabinet, I dare say.
All right, then.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for calling in, Mr. George. Did you have any commentary on that, or is it a thing that you can understand why the feeling would be like this out there?
Okay, I'd like to say this. I was just called upon to come and comment here, not to showcase myself anyway.
Yeah.
So I need to make that very clear. And the ministry is a place where I have known, for quite a number of years, in and out. And so, but the issue is this. The point that I want to make is this. It's about the nation. It's about getting those who are there to actually do what they need to do, because there's always something like a filter between what goes on out there and those who are in such offices, except they go out. So I still want to go back to this point that they need to go out. They'll be able to do a lot. They'll be able to even fix many of these things we are talking about if they are ready to go out. Agriculture is not an armchair business. And those who are ministers of agriculture, you can't compare the Minister of Agriculture with the Minister of Finance. You cannot compare the Minister of Agriculture with the Minister of Health. Those ones, they have their own jobs cut out for them, which most of the time they will be kept in the office. Agriculture is done on the field. And if those who are in charge of agriculture don't go on the field, they will only be getting filtered reports about the field. And then, since this is a political environment, their subordinates and those that work with them will be telling them what is music to their ears, and they will be misled. And of course, they will now have to be fighting media war. They will have to be defending what is indefensible. And then they want to convince the public that is feeling the pain, that there's no pain at all.
Okay.
And that will not be too good for them. So I still come back to this point that let them go on the field. There's a lot happening out there that they need to know about. Let them, like the issue of subsidiarity, I want to mention that because I was told that now they've started, writing letters to the state governments, but it goes beyond writing letters. Don't forget that there are political differences. Like the ruling party will write to a state that is governed by an opposition who, for political differences, may not want to flow with whatever they are coming with. So they need to find a way of actually working together, synergizing. But then I need to also say this. In the concurrent list of the Constitution, states are the best placed in terms of practicing agriculture. At the very most, the federal government is to act in advisory capacity and then formulating policy. But yeah, you cannot formulate policy in a vacuum. You need to know exactly what goes on. For instance, the interventions that have been done so far that I got to know about are mostly in the northern part of the country. And it's not only the northern part of the country that does agriculture. The southern part of the country does agriculture. Tuber crops mostly from the riverine areas up to the middle belt. They are the ones planting tuber crops. And the yield per tuber crop in terms of weight, when you mention in tons, they're even more than the yields of the grains. Because what you get, like, rice will give you, if you plant high-yielding variety of rice, you may get like 5-6 tons per hectare. But cassava, you can get up to like 15 to 20 tons per hectare of cassava. By the time you do dry weight, you may get like up to about 10, 12 metric tons, like gari and some other things. So it means, therefore, weight for weight, what you get from grain is lower per hectare than what you get from tubers. That's what it means. Therefore, now here is a problem when it comes to political positioning. The two ministers are from the northern part of the country. The main minister is from Borno State, and then the Minister of State is from Niger State. Essentially, there's no diversity, there's no room for diversity of policy thoughts. If they're going to sit together, they'll be looking through the same lenses. And the possibility of not being able to see what happens in the southern part of the country is very, very high. And it gets worse. It gets worse. Let me make this point, sir. Sure. It gets worse if the permanent secretary that is in that ministry is also a northerner. Then it gets even more complicated. So I think these are things that should be looked at. So mine would be just to give this kind of advice and then let them go and see how they can tweak.
Without prejudice to this comment that you have made, a place like the Agriculture Ministry, as you have said, it's different from other kinds of ministries. Am I hearing somehow that you are concerned about round, pegs being in round holes, and that if we don't have, because when you made the comment earlier that people have to know the lie of the ground. People have to know what it takes. This is not a political appointment kind of a job. It's almost like you expect the person to
understand the technical underpinning
and be able to get their hands dirty, metaphorically speaking. To know enough about it. So that was where I went. Are you suggesting that there might be that danger that we don't have all the round pegs in all the round holes?
Correct. But to say that also without prejudice, at least I know the profession of one of them, so I don't know that of the other, but I know for a fact that when it comes to professional background, they're not all wrong set of people in the position. But what I'm talking about now is that the issue of even the background, that is to say, part of the country they came from, it matters a great deal too. And one would have expected a balancing. Like if you choose a main minister from the north, maybe the Minister of State from the south, or vice versa, so that at least there would be that complementarity. And that's very, very important. So I think that
diversity of experience.
Exactly. That's very, very important. And so, but when they come from the same part of the country, the northern part of the country, the chances are that they won't look at, because one, emphasis is now on, dealing with the states that are producing rice like Kebbi, Niger, Jigawa, Sokoto, because of all the states. Now, there's a danger of supply shock when it comes to production of food. like we are experiencing now with tomato and pepper. So it then follows, and I said something here 3 years ago, that there should be division of labor, in this country. It was when there was this blockade of food supply. And I said, look, those who masterminded the food blockade had their own business consideration, so it shouldn't be politicized. But when that happens, then you give an impression that if we don't produce so and so, then the other part of the country won't get it. Whereas, if we bring politics into it, we're actually harming those who live daily, by these crops. For instance, those who are producing pepper and tomatoes. If there's a supply shock, if they produce and they cannot bring it over to this side of the country, there might be a glut. And these are perishables, and they can go to waste very quickly and very easily. So even governments, federal government needs to have a hand, they should have a hands-on understanding of these dynamics. It's very, very important. That's why I talked about being on the field. It's not too trivial for them to know about and then to be able to work on.
Well, just as the caller, Mr. George, said, he actually is looking forward to hearing from the ministers in the sector about their road plan, their road map, so that we can sort of better understand what's going on, what the challenges are, what the difficulties are, why we haven't seen, why things have got worse, truth be told, in terms of the ordinary man, in terms of his food security. What that caller, Mr. George...
Well, I understand his question and then, of course, your explanation. Incidentally, I expect that today should be the day the Minister of Agriculture should be given his scorecards. But I've asked myself this question overnight. Scorecard. What are we giving to the country? Because where has been the engagement for the past 8 months upon which a scorecard is going to be given? And I don't want to, be prejudiced. So I want to hear. And if I'm not able to tune in when the scorecard is being given, I love to read about it later in the day.
Of course.
And then know exactly about what. But if the scorecard does not bring in some of these nitty-gritties that we are looking at, then of course it could at best be just reports. And reports could be anything. So, yes, they could be anything.
Because we really do need to. It's an emergency, as the president noted, almost a year ago. And he had even noted it before coming into office.
Yes.
It is a clear emergency.
And you know what my concern is?
Sure.
We're here analyzing this, and everybody is, at least trying to adjust. Like he said, that the food budget in his family...
He has doubled it.
Yes. In fact, in many families, it's been tripled. And those I pity most are those that are down the ladder economically. How do they adjust? Like somebody takes 2,000 naira. A woman takes 2,000 naira to the market thinking she could piece together some soup ingredients. And all she can buy are 8 pieces of tatashe, right? And then
a kind of pepper.
3 or 4 pieces of tomatoes. And then 3 or 4 small balls of onion, and that is all for 2,000 naira. Then you can imagine how such a family would subsist. Now here is the challenge. People get to elastic limits, and the nation should not be allowed to get to that because all said,
you don't want anything.
All said, yes, all said. There's a limit to the endurance of any set of people. Some years back, before the present crisis in Sudan, it was food that actually sparked the one that happened, I think, during the time of Omar. Omar.
I think that was the price of bread.
Yeah, bread, yes. That military turned civilian man that left. Al-Bashir, Omar, it was bread. And so now, if that is the case, we've suffered more than just price of bread increase, prices of many other commodities, and people are adjusting. And the public should not be taken for granted. It gets to a point, even when
there's no more elasticity.
Exactly. So there will be a break. When it gets to breaking point, it snaps.
And that's the one.
And that is what the government of the day must avoid.
When I was talking with an economist about the times, and I had observed that, look, everybody's complaining, even in your domestic situation, that food has gotten almost beyond the reach material. I mean, the women, men for that matter, go to the market and you can't really buy anything worthwhile. But there's a curiosity that I brought to the economist that, look, look at all the eateries. You can say, look at all the eateries, look at the bukas, the restaurants, and prices have doubled, yet the crowds have not thinned in those places. And I was bringing to him that, what's going on? You would have expected that a response to the skyrocketing of the prices of foods, all these air-conditioned eateries, they will just be there. They will not be able to, they won't be customers that can afford anything, and so they would have to bring their prices down in order to attract, I was just going the natural economic way, but he explained it a bit along the lines of which you have also explained it, that, well, people are hoping things will get better, and so they're managing, But let me bring on Mazi Okoroafo. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, Sayori. Good morning, Nigeria. We're morning to all Nigerian children as they mark their day today.
Yes.
May God bless them and keep them. May they keep to the rules and regulation of Nigerian constitution. Now, when we talk about the agriculture, this president has mentioned, they have tried. At least they have tried in the sense that when you look at the price of, let's take for example, rice, which everybody is rushing, so don't think you must eat rice, whether you are poor or rich or whether you are middle class, you need rice. What are we seeing now? At least there is need that rice is coming down as it today. But what I would do is to tell the president that for us to move forward, let's use these forest guys to take care of our farmland. Forest guys to take care of all our farmland so that we have enough food.
Okay, you're talking about the security aspect now. You're talking about the security aspect.
Yes, just call it security aspect. The forest guys, because when you safeguard the farmland, people can now go up and now. Do you know that in Nigeria we have the best potatoes species, we have the best onion species, we have the best mango in this country. At least I have my own farm. By the time I bring it to the people, say, guys, from where I said from Magic farm. That's it. Now the thing is that if the federal government will try as much as possible, all these are our core members. Those of them that don't normally have place of placement, let local government create agri farm for them, and those ones are going. Another part is coming. They will continue the farm production of some particular food in that community. It will help us have excess food. So food security is very, very simple. But then that you don't want to. Now, after the during of in that military era, there's what we call school to learn program. That school to learn program, what happened? Everybody was involved about farmland, farm in the press, vegetables, all those things. But look at tomatoes now. Now it's very cheap. Government should look into the present government statement about storage facilities. Honestly speaking, go to the market and look for that fresh tomatoes, not organic, inorganic. Fresh tomatoes, see how much they will tell you. Some people are selling 3 pieces of tomatoes, 200, some 300, and I want 100 because we don't have storage facilities. The area the federal government encourage the state, encourage the local government, to have storage facilities. Where possible, government can have one. At least, since the political zone, let's have storage facilities. It will help us. Honestly, food is very, very important. A child go to school without breakfast, you will not concentrate.
All right.
Adults, that is why I say breakfast is very, very important before you leave your house. Whether you are fasting or you are fasting, food is important. Water is life, food is life. That is why food is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Mazi Okorabo. He went back to the security aspect.
Yes, it was a good insight, actually, because security is very important. And there's not much anybody could do without this security. Well, if agro rangers will have to be enlisted, then, of course, they should be armed. Because you can't bring in unarmed security agency or security agents to fight those who come fully armed with sophisticated weapons. So to that extent, I mean, that's one thing. And then how many of them do you want to arm? It's like you are creating, and indirectly the fallout could be creating another, militia group, because there will be infiltrators, and there will be those who are not actually committed to that cause who from there, they can abscond with ammunition and it becomes a problem. So I think, this is one aspect that I think a proper national summit needs to be convened. But then, of course, in doing that, it shouldn't just be for the sake of convening a summit. It should involve individuals who can make robust contribution, roadmap on how to go about this. But when I say this, we shouldn't lose sight of those who are having territorial expansion plan, who want to use, of course, it happened the past 9 years. We knew that many of those we found in the forest and all of that, they had a territorial expansion plan. So we should then be mindful of all those ones, while we are thinking about how to actually get this kind of a, plan into action.
Maybe I just wanted to speak for a moment or so on irrigation. We started with it, but how big a challenge is it to be able to have a no downtime kind of irrigation? Because we have the problem that we do with security. Now, what can be done for irrigation?
Okay. Well, there's a whole ministry of water resources. Mm-hmm. It was part of the Ministry of Agriculture before. The ministry was called Ministry of Agriculture and Water Resources. Well, for whatever reason, it was sliced away as a separate ministry, thereby creating another bureaucracy. But now the point is this. It has to work in a very synergistic manner with the Ministry of Agriculture. And the Ministry of Agriculture then needs to have a plan, especially for dry season farming all over the country. Then this had to be done, allowing the state governors to actually be at the forefront in the various states. And then the ministry works along with them, in that synergistic manner. And then, of course, we had, I think, 18 water. I'm coming. Yes, we had this 18 water. Development Authority. I'm trying to remember the name. Actually, you even have Ogunwosun here. It's River Basin Development Authority. So we had, I think, 18 of them. Many of them today are comatose. They are dysfunctional. But many of them can be revived. After all, the Jamari Adeja own is still functional. And I think that's what is helping the farmers in Kano State and some parts of Jigawa State today. That's why they are producing this off-season tomato production and then pepper. Mm-hmm. So if that is still functioning, maybe the government of various states can actually find out how Kano has been able to keep this on since the time of Abba, as governor of Kano State that time. In the time of 12 states, I used to remember the name. So yeah, when we're in primary school when he was a governor in the 70s. So and since then, that River Basin Authority is still on. That irrigation system is still on. So we can go and find out, are they able to sustain it? Perhaps we learn quite a lot from that state.
Indeed. Well,
yes.
I want to thank you very much, as always, Dr. Olukayode Oyeleye, agribusiness analyst, for your perspectives and your ideas. We, as I said, we look forward to the ministers coming and showing us their roadmaps as we continue to grapple with high food prices and looking for an escape. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, then. So that's our program today. Do please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Iyori Folare. Bye-bye for now.
Yes, I can. Good afternoon. Hello. So you eventually went. I refused to tell me. Are you not supposed to go today? Oh, I didn't. I forgot the training thing. I thought you had traveled though. Sorry. Because I was looking for you. I was looking for you. So. Okay. Yeah. That's true. No, mine is now Wednesday, and that's the inauguration day. I don't even have their time. Miko, do what? Maybe when I see because the trainings are different. When I see the roster for their plan for the day ahead, if it doesn't involve me ahead, that's fine. Okay. Don't worry, I'm on air. Bye. That is your break to spoil my news. Bye, yeah. Hello, and thanks for joining us on TVC News at 12. We're staying with latest developments from Kano State, where the Deputy Governor, Aminu Abdulsalam, has now issued a public apology to the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, over allegations of involvement in the emirship crisis in the state. The Deputy Governor made the apology while briefing journalists on the recent development from the government angle as regards the emirship tussle. Mr. Abdulsalam said the Kano State government was misled, but after discreet investigation, the NSA was found not to be involved in the tussle. The Deputy Governor of Kano had earlier alleged that NSA Ribadu was involved in the return of the 15th Emir, Aminu Bayero, to the state after Governor Abba Yusuf escorted the 16th Emir, Muhammadu Sanusi II, to the Emir's palace. The Deputy Governor assured that the crisis that had continued to brew would be traced to its end. And following recent reports of criminal activities in parts of the southwest region, the Nigerian Army has initiated anti-kidnapping and illegal mining operations within its area of responsibility, according to a press statement from the 2-Division Garrison of the Nigerian Army in Ibadan. The operation, codenamed Operation Omigbono, commenced on May the 21st due to the increasing incidences of kidnapping, illegal mining, armed robbery, and other crimes prevalent in the area. The Army said that the influx of criminal gangs is a result of their sustained offensive operations against these criminals in the northwest and north central regions, forcing them to seek new havens to continue their activities. The army noted that the movement of military troops will be noticeable around the Old Oyo National Park and suspected forest where the criminals are believed to be hiding, and urged residents to go about their legitimate businesses. President Bola Tinubu has flagged off the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway and other projects. President Tinubu said the project would revolutionize transportation in Nigeria and bolster the unique economic strength of all zones. President Tinubu assured that the project will ensure future generations have a good landmark and memory to treasure. TVC News senior correspondent Sarah Ayeko was there.
It's another homecoming for President Bola Tinubu as he arrives Section 1, Phase 1 of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, in company of state governors, members of the National Assembly, APC party leaders, and traditional rulers. Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, is hosting these dignitaries to flag off the ambitious 700-kilometer superhighway, a 10-lane road project that represents President Tinubu's commitment to facilitate economic growth and improve the living standard of Nigerians.